What's that like? What's going on, people? Hey, it's another edition of the What's That Like podcast, and I am your host, John Knowles. We are back again with another new episode. I promised you we'd be cranking out some more in a hurry here, and this will be our third one in 3 weeks. I'm glad to get it out to you. I want to thank all of you for all the listening support you've given to the show. I think our Facebook page just crossed over the 500 like range, which is still kind of amazing to me when I start to think about what we've done with this show in just 6 short months. It really is amazing. We've expanded, most of you probably have come to the show via some of the videos that I've posted over the last 2 or 3 months or so. And that's just kind of been a way to promote the audio show, which is what you're listening to right now. But hey, if you like them both, great. If you like one over the other, I'll take you either way. As you know, this show is absolutely 100% and always will remain free. I produce this whole thing out of pocket myself. It doesn't cost any of you a dime. I don't even have sponsors at this point, more by choice than by lack of. I've actually been offered a couple of things at times, and I'm like, well, I could get a little bit of money to help offset some of my costs, but it's not really going to change my life. And at this point, I produce these things when I can, not necessarily because I have to. So it helps keep the quality of the show high because I'm only going to do it when I think I've got something quality going on, and I'm not just cranking episodes out because I'm on a schedule and I have to get them done. So I think that's better for you as well. Every time I put something out, it's going to be of a standard that I think upholds what the What's That Like podcast is all about. Our last guest was Kaylin Chardon of Illinois Hauntings, American Hauntings, and Haunted Carlinville Tours. She is putting on a whole slew of these tours in Alton and Carlinville coming up. She was back on the show, as you know, last week to tell some more stories around all the crazy haunted and crazy kooky history that we've got in this central Illinois area. And she's going to be doing one of the tours that I'm actually going to be attending on October 14th. It's a Saturday night. I think it starts at 7 o'clock. It's the Haunted Carlinville History Tour. I think it's $25 a person. And feel free to join in. That's going to kind of be the What's That Like Nation version of what we've got going on. I've got myself, my wife, about 4 or 5 other friends that are going to go. And we'd love to see some more of you out there and really support Kaylin in what she does. I think she's got a heck of a thing going over there, and do it with some friends of yours here from the What's That Like podcast. That'd be great too. Make sure you go over to IllinoisHauntings.com. You'll see the list of all the tours there. And again, the one on October 14th in Carlinville, that's the one that the WTL Nation will be a part of. This week, I've got my friend James Labonte. Now, James and I have been friends for probably, it's coming up on 30 years. His wife, Kim, I've known since we were, little kids, 1st or 2nd grade. We went to school together as well. But they're from here in the Mount Olive area. We are too. Our oldest daughters are both the same age, and we've spent a lot of time traveling, camping, vacationing a lot with each other's families. So yeah, I'm happy to bring James onto the show to talk about his business, which is called Labonte Photography. Now, Labonte Photography is a studio. He will come and take your family photos. He will do other photos that you might have if you've got your family reunion going on, and he'll do that. But he's also branched out into what I really think is a cool thing, and that's helping you learn how to use your camera the correct way. Cameras are expensive. People go out and they'll buy a $700, $800 camera, lots of features on it. And if you're like me, you don't know how to use it. You need a trained professional that can show you the ropes, tell you how to use these things, teach you the tips, the tricks, and everything you can do to get the most out of this most important investment, so you can capture the memories the way that you want. James teaches some classes in that. He's been doing that for 3 or 4 years, and they recently moved over to the MAC, the Macoupin Art Collective in Staunton, to teach some of those classes, and he'll do one-on-ones and things like that, and you'll hear all about that in the show. But by and large, I want to thank James for really providing a service in this area that I don't know anyone does. So not only is he a photographer, he's an instructor as well, and you're going to hear a little bit about a walk that he's leading for a photo journey, so to speak. So here he is, James Labonte. I'm going to ask him, what's that like? What was little Jimmy like growing up? Was it White City?
Yep, grew up in White City pretty much all my life. I was actually born near Atlanta, Georgia. Lived there a whopping 6 months. Remember it well.
Yeah?
Not at all. And grew up in White City, pretty much running around on the mean streets on the bicycle with some of the other local boys, and grew up in the woods. Spent a lot of time outdoors. You know, we didn't have video games and all that other fun stuff that everybody has. In fact, in the wintertime, we used to have to kick another friend's mom off the video game so we could play because she was busy playing.
So you've been here in this community. White City's just across the highway from Mont Olive. You went to Mont Olive High School.
Yep.
And then you graduated there. What was that? 87?
87.
And then where? Where did you go after that?
Then I went away for my first year of college to Indiana Tech in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Mm-hmm. Why'd you go there?
They had purportedly really good computer science program, had high employment rates after people graduated, things like that. You know, all the fun stuff colleges do to entice you.
Yeah.
But after a year there, I grew up quite a bit, figured out that I didn't really need to spend that kind of money out of state, and transferred to SIU Edwardsville. Graduated from there.
So you finished up at SIUE, and you've been in computer science ever since?
Yeah.
And what do you do today?
Today, my official title is an EMR admin, which is basically a fancy title for somebody that takes care of the main system that deals with patient care at a hospital.
At a hospital, okay. And photography is why you're here today.
Yeah.
You are the owner of?
Labonte Photography.
And how long has that been in business?
Right around 10 years.
10 years? You've been taking pictures longer than that, though.
Yeah. I started really getting more passionate about pictures back in high school days. We actually had a shop teacher that came in after our first shop teacher passed away over the Christmas break.
Wow.
And he had a passion for photography, turned one of the rooms into a dark room, and we did black and white film photography, and then we even dabbled a little bit in color.
Dabbled in color. It wasn't the dark ages, it was the 80s.
There was no digital.
No, there was no digital. Do you remember the first kind of camera you ever got?
But the first camera I used, I borrowed from my grandfather.
Yeah.
Which was a 35 millimeter black. You know, we shot a lot of black and white or color film in that.
Yeah.
Never did any of that type of thing professionally. From there, the first, interestingly enough, the first digital camera I ever owned actually used floppy disks for quote unquote film.
Like 3.5 inch.
Yeah, the 3.5 inch hard floppies. I still have that camera today, and if I could find a floppy, I think it still actually works.
I think I have some.
We have to try that.
I could hook you up. I know I've got some out in a file cabinet somewhere, unless the oxidation on the disc has ruined them or something. Is that possible?
It's a good question, because I found a pile of them at the old studio house, stuck them in there, and it didn't care for those. So
it didn't work for them, huh? So when did you start transitioning then from a hobby into a paid gig? When did you kind of go, this is something I want to maybe make a little bit of money at?
Yeah, so I guess about 10 years ago, we bought our first digital SLR camera, which is physically just like a film camera, except you don't put film in it. Mm-hmm. Something with, interchangeable lenses, all that fun stuff. We actually bought it just to take more or less photographs of the family and the kids, just like everybody else buys one.
Yeah.
I started taking some pictures of, just family and friends, and people looked at it and noticed that, hey, these look pretty good. You should start encouraging me to go professional, which is unfortunately what happens to a lot of people.
Uh-huh.
I guess fortunately for me, I believed them. Because if you never notice anything when you post a picture on Facebook, all of your likes and ohs and ahs and all these great comments, they're your friends and family.
That's true.
They're not your worst critics.
No.
So you get this level of confidence from your friends and family. But fortunately, I guess for me, my friends and family were right, and just have been pursuing professional photography for the last 10 years.
What was your first paid gig? What was the first time somebody paid you money to do it?
Probably about 9 years ago. I believe it was the Titsworth family.
Yeah, just a family photos?
Yeah, just a family photo session,
yeah.
So nothing too big.
Yeah, and as you're doing this and getting more and more into it, how quickly did you kind of go off the end of more equipment, better equipment? Was this something you're still doing, or is this something that was a slow burn? How's that worked out for you?
I like to tell people that when they ask me about photography and in general, and that it's the world's most expensive hobby to start out. There's nothing cheap about it. If anybody tells you that you can get XYZ really cheap, don't do it. But we started out with kind of minimal equipment. I actually used eBay for my first studio lights. They were actually very inexpensive, probably like $50 a piece type of lights. Learned to use those. A lot of it really goes into not so much the equipment itself, but knowing how to use it. So I practice a lot in the basement. In fact, I've got some interesting pictures of your daughter because she's friends of mine.
Yes, that's right.
So she was one of the first guinea pigs.
Our families have grown up together. They really have. I mean, the kids and everyone, we've been very intertwined over the last 15, 20 years. So it makes sense to me.
Yep. So we had a little studio in the basement there and, just hung up the black sheet on the wall and had some fun learning about lighting and what to do, what not to do type of thing. And then you kind of grow from there and you realize that, your $50 lights just can't keep up or do what it is that you really are after as you start to look at more and more photographers' work. A lot of the way I learned a lot of lighting techniques and things like that comes from other articles where people tell you just open a magazine, look at a photograph, an ad photograph, even whatever, and try to figure out how they lit it. So you just sort of dissect that. And from doing that, you learn very quickly that, you need lighting modifiers and things like that to shape and scope the light as opposed to just blast people with light. So then you start buying more and more equipment. There was a business in Litchfield for a short period of time where it was kind of a do-it-yourself studio, if you will. You could go in and rent the place. They had a bunch of backgrounds and lighting equipment and things like that. I actually rented it once for a paid gig. And then shortly after that, they decided that was a business model that just wasn't really taking off for them. So they sold all their equipment. And we ended up buying the majority of their lighting equipment, some of the backgrounds, and a few other props and things like that.
That kind of jump-started your stuff then.
Yeah, and that jump-started. So I have, from that purchase, I have probably one of the world's largest soft boxes. It's literally as big as I am.
What's a soft box?
So that's just a device you put in front of a flash to shape the light and to soften it.
Okay.
Hence the term soft. So rather than just when you blast a bare bulb out into anything, even a light bulb in your room, the light just spills everywhere. Light travels in a straight line. So if it can come off an edge of a light in a straight line, that's where it's going to go. So you take these different shapes and sizes of soft boxes and things, and you shape the light, so you force it in a specific direction, and then you usually want to soften it because most people don't look good with hard light.
Is that kind of one of the biggest tricks between a good-looking photo and a photo?
It can be. It depends. If you're going for just kind of your run-of-the-mill photo of a person, what do they look like when you look at them naturally? You're after not changing the way that they look with the light. So you kind of just have to study how light naturally hits a person's face and then mimic that with fake light for the camera to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
And then other things, you're trying to get extremely artistic. So you're, lighting half their face or, you're doing all kinds of fun, weird things with light.
What's the biggest mistake people make? Maybe when they think they want to take good pictures and they decide, I don't want to pay for that. I'll just go buy the camera myself. What's the biggest mistakes people make when they do that? Is it the camera itself, not knowing how to use it, both? How would you answer that question?
9 times out of 10, it's not necessarily knowing how to use it to its full capacity. So I teach a lot of people now that, and I talk to them a lot about, why did you buy this camera? What are you intending to photograph with it? And most of the time, it's moms and dads that bought it to photograph their kids playing sports or, just around the house and things like that.
Yeah.
And they believe that they want to save money, by not paying a professional. So they go out and they buy the camera that they see in the ads and on the store and things like that without really pre-educating themselves on what the capabilities of the camera and the lens are. And then they, bring it home, take it out of the box, turn it on, and 3 or 4 times out of 10, they get a good shot based on just, leaving the camera the way it came out of the box. And then other times, then they take it and they figure out, okay, well, I can do this. And they go to a sporting event and all their pictures are blurry or too dark or possibly too bright or whatnot. And without the knowledge behind how to actually control the camera as opposed to letting the camera control you, they get frustrated. They put it back in the box and there it sits for years to come.
So what would you recommend people do if they want to expand and go into a nicer camera to get those better photos? What's your best advice for those people?
The best thing you can do is, seek out a photographer or seek out one of your friends that you look at their pictures and they seemingly have mastered the craft.
Yeah.
And, try to get their advice for, what types of things did they struggle with and have to go through, and what did they really have to buy to get the photo that they wanted.
Yeah.
Or read magazines, read articles on the internet, whatever, sort of pre-educate yourself before you actually, open your wallet.
Yeah. Now, you've stepped into this, right? I mean, I know for the last, 3-4 years, you've been teaching classes. It's like if you bought this camera, you'll offer to help them how to use it. You've kind of taken your business and taking it in a whole nother direction to expand it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you could say, I guess, that I have a passion for rescuing cameras from dust. That's kind of how it started. It started out as, just another way to make a buck to support the business. It also kind of grew into a passion of, there's a lot of people out there that own these things that are frustrated with them, and they just sit there and collect dust, and nobody uses them. I felt like, why not try and see if people are interested in actually learning how to use their cameras?
Yeah. So how would they find out about your classes?
Every class that I have is advertised on Facebook. I have 2 different Facebook business pages, if you will. One is for my photography business in and of itself, and then the other one is for my training business. So if you just search for Labonte Photography, you'll run across both of them, actually.
Okay. What are they going to learn in your class? How long is it going to take? What's it cost?
I have 2 classes that I've been teaching now semi-regularly, I suppose you could say. One is a very beginner level that I talk about the basics of exposure. There are 3 things that you have to learn how to control in the camera to get proper exposure. And then I have another advanced class that goes beyond exposure, a little bit more into creativity, talks a little bit more about color of light, and understanding why your camera doesn't work like your human brain and in your eyes, and the things that you have to do to deal with that, and a little bit about flash photographies. Occasionally I'll teach someone one-on-one lessons in studio photography, or pretty much anything they want to know. I'm an open book when it comes to any techniques that I use or anything that I do.
Yeah.
Some photographers like to keep little secrets in their back pocket because that's their signature way of doing things. I, on the other hand, if you ask me a question and I know the answer, I'll give you the answer. If I don't know, I won't make it up.
Yeah.
I'll help you research it and we'll figure it out.
Now, you mentioned you had a studio house. You teaching most of your classes there?
I started out teaching all the classes in the studio and have progressed from there actually to a place in Staunton called the MAC.
Okay.
And the MAC stands for Macoupin Art Collective. And some fine folks over there are doing some great things in the community of Staunton for all forms of art. In fact, they even have a darkroom if you're interested in film photography.
Really?
I partnered with them to teach a couple of digital photography classes. So I've been teaching the beginner and advanced classes there. From there, if you really wanted to do more studio lighting in that, rather than me drag all that stuff over there, I would teach those out of the studio. But it's been good. We've had a couple big classes, a couple small classes. The word's kind of getting out a little bit. And it's been fun meeting new people and learning, what it is they know and what they don't know. And I've, believe it or not, had a few students contact me back and say, wow, I learned a lot. And, now I really have a better understanding for what I'm doing. And, some you never hear from again because I'm guessing just from the looks on their faces after they're done that this is really hard.
Well, if it was easy, everybody'd do it, right?
Exactly. That's what the iPhone and the Android phone are for.
Yeah. James, it's the holidays coming up. We're going to have a lot of family photos in the house, Thanksgiving, Christmas, things like that. What are some of the easiest things I can do with a camera to take a better picture, say in a closed environment like your house?
Inside the house, most of the time, there's typically not enough light. You may have what you deem as the brightest room in the house. 9 times out of 10, to get a really good photo of a group of people in a house, you need to use some sort of a flash. Unfortunately, the one that came with your camera that's built in is usually not up to par. So you'll end up spending a few bucks. They've got some really good quality lights that you can buy, just stick right on top of the camera for $50-$60 now.
Yeah.
And my biggest advice there is if you have that type of light, just point that sucker straight up at the ceiling and use that to bounce the light back down onto the people.
Okay. Not taking lampshades off and trying to just flood everyone. That's not a good idea?
No, not usually.
Okay. We're out in the backyard. and it's just a normal day, and you're not too far away, but you want to take a nice picture out next to a tree or something. What are the things you want to look for there?
Yeah, so you're outside, so usually plenty of light, so you don't need any artificial light if you so choose. Typically, we'll get a better photo if you place the subject in the shade or at least place it so that their back is to the sun. And generally, that's just because if you turn towards the sun, the first thing you do is squint your eyes, and you don't get a very good photo of people with squinty eyes,
Okay.
unless that's what you're after. So, if you're outside trying to take a portrait of sorts, find a nice shady spot, an overhang from the house, tree, whatever. And then you could try shooting it with the camera in full auto mode, and it'll probably do an okay job there. Or if you're trying to get a little bit more creative and you want the old background to be blurred behind them like you see the fancy professionals do, you'd want to set it on aperture priority mode and open up the aperture to the largest setting that you can get, which is very confusing because that's actually the smallest number.
So give me an example. What does that mean?
So your aperture numbers generally go from like a 2 to a 22. So an aperture of a 2 would be actually more light coming through the lens versus 22, which is smaller or less light.
Is that the f-stop?
Yes.
So it's the f-stop, lower number, more light.
Yes. And the reason for that is it's actually a fraction. It's not generally represented on the camera as a fraction, which is what confuses people.
I gotcha.
So it's actually 1/2. So half is larger than 1/22 or 1/22.
Okay. And you mentioned before, a lot of people will buy these cameras and go, well, I want to take pictures of my child. It's soccer season. Football's going on. Soccer game probably a little bit easier during a Saturday afternoon. What would you say for somebody like that that's a distance away?
Yeah, so generally you want to kind of get in as close as you can to the action, which means you're going to have to spend a few more dollars on a telephoto lens, because a shot of just a bunch of little people running around on the field is generally not as interesting as a close-up shot of your kid taking the ball off the face.
Digital zoom is not a real zoom? Yeah,
digital zoom generally won't cut it. Usually what happens is the photo ends up grainy if you end up with digital zoom. So like on your phone, for example, has a certain range of digital zoom, and we've all tried it. And we could get okay photos sometimes, but a lot of times we notice that it's either ends up blurry or grainy.
And that's because it's basically trying to enhance one small portion. So I'll say pixels that you get on your iPhone, you reduce that number by a factor of 10 if you get a 10 times digital zoom. Do I have that right?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay.
So you're basically making larger pixels out of the tiny pixels.
Okay. So during the daytime, plenty of light, get a nice optical zoom lens if possible. What would you say if it's a football game, Friday Night Lights? Probably a little bit tougher.
Yeah, a little bit tougher because, again, it's not enough light. You generally don't want to use a flash. My rule of thumb for any sports photography is do not ever use a flash, mainly because it A, won't help your photo, and B, could cause harm to athletes. So, picture yourself at a football game, you're in the end zone, kid's charging towards you, and you blast him with a bright light in his face, and he gets nailed, from the side.
Yeah.
All because of you.
That's not what you want. It's dangerous enough on the field to begin with.
Not cool. So first thing you're going to need to do is grab up all your equipment and run.
Sound like you've been there before.
No.
No.
Fortunately, I learned early on in the years of photographing the kids at gymnastics events, because they announce very loudly,
no flash photography.
Yeah, absolutely no flash. And it's for the athlete's safety. It's not to make your life harder.
Yeah. How important is Photoshop to everything that you do?
So generally, a photo that comes straight out of the camera still has a lot of flaws, whether it be flaws on the person themselves. A lot of people still have acne. I'm 48 years old, and they still get a pimple every now and then.
Yeah.
Facial blemish, or when I photograph a lot of kids, they have a lot of cut, scrapes, and scars because they like to fall a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, everything that you see that I'll publish on Facebook or my website will be run through Photoshop in some way, shape, or form, some more than others. And other things, to correct either possibly mistakes that I've made when I took the photo, so lighting mistakes or the color of the light in the photo. A lot of times we do that, a lot of correction there.
Mm-hmm.
I actually shoot in what's called RAW mode on the camera, which basically says just capture what you see and don't do anything to it. Whereas when you take a photo and you look at the back of it, even shooting in RAW, when you look at the back of the camera, It's actually been processed by the camera into a JPEG file.
Okay.
So the camera's done something to it. So when I take that raw file and put it onto the computer, it doesn't look exactly like it did on the back of the camera.
Because it's open for everything to be interpreted.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Are there Photoshop alternatives that people could utilize, maybe that's less costly?
There are a few. There's a suite that I actually use as a plugin from a company called On1 that they keep adding more and more features to that package and that you can actually run it as a standalone as well as a Photoshop plugin that you can do quite a bit with photos. And then Adobe also has a product that they call Lightroom that was actually built by photographers for photographers. Photoshop was not. Both of those apps still have a few limitations, but for the most part, you can do pretty much anything that you would need to do unless you're altering the photo in a way where you need more tools and things that aren't in those two applications. But a lot of photographers today will just use Lightroom, which is less expensive. Adobe has gone to a subscription model now, though, so you get both Lightroom and Photoshop for $10 a month. So you can't just out and out buy either package anymore.
It's a subscription-based model.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paid license, I guess you could say. But at least you're getting updates along the way.
Yeah, you get updates instantaneously. Yeah. You don't have to wait year over year for a new update. You don't have to pay $100 a year, $200 a year for the updates anymore. You just pay your $10 a month and move along with that product. But the On1 product, you can just purchase and use it. They do release updates and encourage you to buy the updates every year. There is a freebie out there on the internet called GIMP, which is a lot like Photoshop, but in my opinion, just because I've used Photoshop for a lot of years, it's more difficult to use. But I would imagine that if you grew up using GIMP, you would find Photoshop more difficult to use.
Is that like an open source thing? Yeah.
And
I've heard of that.
You can run that on Windows or Linux or the Mac. So.
If I'm going to go buy a camera, holidays are coming, what are the most important factors that you would tell me to consider before I bought one, just as a total amateur rookie?
Yeah, so the most important thing really is figuring out ahead of time what it is that you want to photograph, and then looking at actually the lenses before you actually look at the camera body itself. There are a lot of differences between the different camera bodies. A lot of it comes down to cost. In all honesty, you could take a really good lens and put it on a less expensive camera body and get just as good of a photo as you could with a really good camera body. But if you put a cheap lens on any camera body, it doesn't really matter whether you paid $1,000 or $4,000 for the camera body. You're still not going to get a good photo.
Lens is the most important thing, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, the lens is the key to the whole thing.
And if I want to shoot sports, I need a long lens.
If you want to get in close to the action, you need a long lens.
If I want something close, I don't need it, but I probably want something that shoots and takes in more light in the way that you were talking before, right?
Yeah, and something that you can focus close with, which they label as a macro lens.
I gotcha. So a lot of this stuff, like you said, can be learned at the Mac in Staunton. You're teaching classes on there. Is it like a monthly basis?
Yeah, I've been doing about one a month now. This time of year has been a little bit sparse, I should say, because a lot of the folks that are interested in it, their kids are all active in the sports right now, and it's very difficult for them to get away. So I envision that it'll probably pick up more in the wintertime. We'll still be competing with a few of the winter sports, but won't be competing with other outdoor activities that the moms would have, I should say.
And they can get more information, like you said, on Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely.
On your webpage there. You've got an event coming up called the Worldwide Photo Walk. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the Worldwide Photo Walk, it's actually the 10th anniversary of the Worldwide Photo Walk. It was started by a photographer out of the Tampa, Florida area by the name of Scott Kelby. Scott has all sorts of businesses that, he teaches a lot of photography. He obviously takes a lot of photos. He photographs for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the sidelines. He's pretty well known and respected within the industry, and I've actually learned a lot from a lot of his online classes and in-person classes, actually. And so Scott started this 10 years ago as a way to create more community in the photography world, if you will. It's a very simple premise. You just gather up a bunch of people in towns throughout the world. He just picked a specific day. You don't actually have to do it on that day, but it's a little bit more fun, I guess, if you do it on the actual photo walk day.
Hashtag it all over social media, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you just go out and photograph things that you would find potentially interesting. So some people are interested in architecture, so you find old buildings and things to photograph. Some people are interested in photographing people. So some of the walks, photographers will bring along a model or someone to shoot in front of the interesting architecture. Basically the organizer is in charge of getting everybody together, creating a map, if you will, of where you're going to walk. Some walks people stick together and everybody travels as a group, and other walks you hand them a map and off they go, and they take interesting photos of whatever it is they find interesting. We participated in a couple in the Alton area, so I have some interesting photos of, I believe it was a bunch of bathtubs buried in a backyard we found. So you find all kinds of interesting things in different communities. I chose Staunton just because it's close to home.
Yeah. You're running class out there, so you've got an audience, right?
Yeah, so we have a bit of an audience. We are actually starting at the back. We got permission to use their parking lot as a staging area, if you will. Mm-hmm. And we'll walk probably 1 or 2 miles and try to find some interesting things in Staunton to photograph. Anybody that would stick with me, they can ask any sort of question that they would like. And the beauty part of it is it's absolutely free. Absolutely free is a good cost for people in this day and age. So when is it? It is Saturday, October 7th. We're going to start at 9 a.m. In front of the MAC. It's right there on Staunton Main Street. They do have a sign out front, so hopefully you can't miss it. It's where the old, I believe, Bishop Motors was. Okay, yeah. How long will that day last? So you said you might walk a mile or two. What would the day look like? Yeah, I've got it scheduled from 9 a.m. to noon. A lot of it depends on how fast you walk, how often you stop and take photos of various things. Most of the time, it's about a 3-hour sort of jaunt, if you will, through whatever community it is you choose, in our case, Staunton. And then after that, anybody that wants to get together, potentially for lunch, we could stick around and hit up one of the local eateries there at Staunton and, talk photography, look at each other's photos. One of the other side benefits of this is that you do get to submit, and we do encourage you to submit your photos to Scott's worldwide site, and he is giving away some prizes. Okay. So is there anything, is there a T-shirt or anything involved for the one that you're doing? You can purchase a T-shirt. The T-shirts he put together to benefit an organization called the Springs of Hope in Kenya. 100% of the proceeds from the shirts go to the orphanage. That's just something that Scott's felt compelled to give to over the last 10 years. So you can also, he has another link on the Worldwide Photo Walk site that you can just, out and out donate cash to it as well. All right. So the day to get on that is October 7th, 9 a.m. Just show up that day, or do they have to pre-register? They do pre-register, and again, it's free. Just go out and search for worldwidephotowalk.com. All run together, all one word. And they'll find more information again on your Facebook site. You can find it on my Facebook site. There's a link to it from there. Okay. James, you've been doing this now for about 10 years, and I know you go and you shoot stuff down at, it's the Paul Mitchell School. Is that right? Yeah. I do have a good friend that's one of the owners down at the Paul Mitchell School. She's does mainly hair. She'll do makeup as well, but she's mainly a hairstylist. Mm-hmm. We get together usually about once or twice a year to do some creative things. Mm-hmm. And then I've done some other things with some of the students from the school. And then I've photographed the school, I guess you could say commercially, for some contests and stuff that they enter. So we've formed a pretty good relationship over the years. I know you generally post some neat photographs coming out of those events that seem to get a lot of those likes you talk about on Facebook. Yes. People generally like the really creative stuff. In fact, we're doing a shoot that same weekend on the Sunday the 8th here in Mount Olive, kind of a biker chick theme. Ginger, the gal that is my friend there, she and her husband just went to Sturgis this year. Yeah. And she, saw the scenery and all the fun things, the way people were dressed. And she dressed as the biker chick herself, obviously. So she came back inspired, and she reached out to me and said, "Hey, you want to get together again and do something creative?" And I'm always up for something creative. It's obviously difficult to find people that'll pay you to do that sort of work. Mm-hmm. But it's the type of work that I really like to do because it stretches your abilities and your creativity. So we're going to get together on Sunday with a couple of models and Ginger herself and a makeup artist, make something creative. Cool. If I ask you what's the favorite picture you ever took, it might be unfair. But what are some of the favorite photos you've taken that maybe you can send me and we'll post them along with the show? A couple of years ago, when my oldest daughter, Alyssa, was a senior, we did a senior shoot. and again, wanted to do a little bit of creative work, working with Ginger. And we shot in an orange parachute dress.
Okay.
So
I remember this one, yeah.
So we were shooting at Paul Mitchell School. As we were kind of getting ready and prepping, there was one of the students walked through, and she was a redhead and appeared to be able to fit into the dress because the dress was very tight-fitting. And she wandered by, and I just kind of looked at her and looked at Ginger and said, "Hey, you think we could shove her in that dress?" And she's like, "Well, I don't know." So I went and showed the gal the dress, and she's like, "Oh, yeah, absolutely." Ginger spent a good hour doing hair and makeup and just transformed her look from just straight, flat hair to an unbelievable look. And we took her out and put her on top of the parking garage right next to the school, which you can't really necessarily tell that's where it was photographed from because there's a huge brownstone building behind it, which is what I was really after. It was very windy, very cold, but everybody persevered. And we got a really cool shot up on top of that parking garage of the dress flowing in the wind. And actually entered that photo into a contest at one of the conventions that we go to every year, and it actually merited. So
good,
which means that it scored above, I believe it's an 85 on a score of 0 to 100 type of thing. That was one of my all-time favorite photos. Partially because I got some industry recognition, but I think it's just a really cool photo.
Cool. There are sports photographers. There are family photographers. There are all types of photographers. What type of photographer would you categorize yourself as?
I like to say that I'm a people photographer. So,
yeah.
Pretty much anything that involves people, because, animals and buildings and architecture and things like that don't pay the bills. Plus, where we live here in the good old town of Mount Olive, there really isn't much architecture to shoot.
Yeah.
And people are a lot more interesting to photograph. But from a people's perspective, I really cater more towards portrait photography. I will do some sports photography. We do some volume sports photography, too, for...
like sports leagues, teams, stuff like that.
Things like that. Yeah. We do also do a benefit every year to help out the cheerleading squad here in Mount Olive. We put together their calendar for them. It helps them raise usually upwards of over $1,000 or more per year for their program. But yeah, about the only thing that I don't shoot a whole lot of is weddings. But I will shoot your wedding, but just haven't had a lot of opportunity to shoot a lot of weddings.
What's your best tips for getting better pictures with my phone?
I actually got some pretty cool photos of the Grand Canyon here this past weekend using an iPhone. I didn't want to lug any kind of camera equipment around. We were traveling light. We were traveling just with carry-on, so didn't want to carry on yet another carry-on. And I believe it works on any type of phone. I know it works for sure on an iPhone, but I actually watched a video on the way there from, again, Scott Kelby's site. It was actually his wife is an iPhone photographer, if you will, and she takes some really cool pictures of things just with an iPhone. One of the tips that she gave was to set the camera to video mode, and then in video mode, you notice there's another little white circle on the screen that I had no idea what it did, but actually it allows you to take a still photo while you're videoing. Essentially, the big tip there is to set your camera to the highest level of resolution that you can take with video. So in my case, the iPhone 7 takes 4K video, so you set it to 4K. And take short little videos, and as you're videoing it, actually push the little white button to capture a still. And the main reason you do that is that it actually takes a wider photo than it would with just the camera itself.
Really?
So it was something I didn't know until I watched the video, and...
That's a good tip.
Gave that a try, so
everybody try that. That's a cool little thing. James, everyone that comes on the show has to get subjected to my 5 questions. So this is your turn, buddy. What was the first job you ever had?
The first job I had was, I guess you could count when I was probably 12 years old. Worked for the Village of White City, pulling weeds and other odd jobs and things that most kids do. It
was the first real paying job where you had to go to work.
First real paying job was at Action Cycle in Litchfield, Illinois. Just kind of doing, again, odd things around there, and evolved into parts sales and sales of motorcycles.
What was your favorite Christmas gift you ever got as a kid? Or even as an adult?
I'm going to go with as an adult. My favorite present actually was my wife bought me a motorcycle and stuck it underneath the Christmas tree.
Really?
Yeah.
Underneath the Christmas tree?
Yeah, it was a dirt bike, so it was small.
Okay.
Fit underneath the Christmas tree. She actually had Santa Ron Scheller wheel it into the house.
That's a good gift. What song are you embarrassed to say you know all the words to, and you'll sing along in the car when no one's looking?
I do have to say that I have a really horrible memory when it comes to songs, but I can sing along to things if I hear it. But if you ask me to whip something out a cappella, I
you couldn't. But
generally can't do it. But
what song do you sing along to?
I'm going to go with Bop by Hanson.
That's my answer. I love Bop. That's one of the greatest songs ever.
I know, and everybody makes fun of.
Bop, shibba-dabba-da-doo-wop. Come on, shibba-dab-da-doo-wop. You're not gonna sing?
Yeah, no.
Come on. If there's a TV show out there, what TV show would James Labonte be a character on? You're not replacing a character. James is the character. What show would that be?
I'd have to say probably MacGyver.
MacGyver?
Yeah.
Why MacGyver?
Well, he just, he can get out of any situation with a paperclip and some chewing gum.
So you couldn't be MacGyver. So
no. I'd have to be the guy that he rescued and saved from being blown up.
Now that's a good answer. I like that. So the fifth question is actually 10 questions.
Uh-oh.
Okay, and these are easier. Okay, so here you go. If you're going to shoot, sunlight or clouds?
Clouds.
Why?
Clouds actually act as a free softbox.
Mm-hmm.
So it softens the light, gets rid of a lot of ugly, harsh shadows on people's faces. Again, I'm a people photographer. If I'm photographing landscape, architecture, whatever, I could care less what this guy looks like because I can replace it and make it look like whatever I want.
Yeah.
But when it comes to people photography, clouds.
Okay. Canon or Nikon?
I shoot Canon, so I have to say Canon. I have taught a lot of people with Nikons, and I have to still say Canon, primarily just because I'm more used to the menus and buttons and features and functions on a Canon, and I'm a little upset that Nikon hides things in menus.
Yeah, okay. A Mac or a PC?
Currently, I use a Mac for photography work. I do use a PC at my work job. I do have to say that kind of fallen in love with the Mac, not to sound like a commercial, but the thing just works.
It just works, yeah. Bruce Springsteen or Retro Rocket?
Oh, that's tough, especially when you're sitting across from a guy from Retro Rocket. I'm going to have to go with Bruce.
I knew you would, so that's why it was a planted question. I'm sitting here thinking, I don't know that you like anyone besides Bruce.
I do like a lot of other artists, but I have a passion for Bruce's music and his message.
Yeah, Clarence or Little Steven?
I really like them both. I mean, Clarence obviously is passed on.
Yeah,
he did a lot of great things for Bruce through the years with his saxophone
signature,
his signature saxophone.
Yeah, he was a big part.
Little Steven's also a really good guy, really great guy. He's done a lot of things even outside of the E Street Band.
So you're neutral on those two guys, is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
All right. Summer shandy or a Corona with a lime?
Depends on the time of year, I'd say. In the summertime, I prefer the summer shandy because that's when you can get it.
Yeah, that's true. Line and Kugels puts it out their seasonal beer, and that's one of our favorites.
Yeah. But, and I'll drink a Corona any time of year. Usually if I'm just looking for something light.
Grab a Corona.
Yeah.
Travel in the U.S. or in Europe?
I've done both. I haven't seen a lot of the U.S. actually out west. I've seen both coasts, but missing some of the meat in between.
Yeah.
Seen a lot of the Midwest. Did a little bit of traveling in Europe. Europe definitely has a lot better architecture and more interesting things to look at, like old castles and things like that. Do like to go visit those places, and it stops and you stop and think that how old a castle is in Europe, and then you stop and think about the oldest building in the United States, and it's nowhere close.
Yeah.
So
family truckster or the convertible?
No, I'd say the convertible.
Yeah, you like the convertible, which is going to lead me to my next question. One of your favorite movies, of course. So we're going to go with Beverly D'Angelo or Christy Brinkley.
Oh, Christy Brinkley.
I knew you'd have to say that.
That's a Ginger Marianne kind of question there.
Yeah, I know. That's why I chose it. See, and I would go with Beverly D'Angelo. I don't know. I like Beverly
But do you
D'Angelo.
go for Ginger or Marianne?
Yes.
There you go.
So that leads to the last question here. Vacation or Christmas Vacation?
I'd have to say Christmas Vacation.
Yeah, you quote that movie incessantly. I mean, all year long. Well, James, I want to thank you for coming on the show. It's been a long time coming. Why don't you run down one more time where we can find all the information on you and your classes and the upcoming events?
Okay, so I do have a website that's just www.labontePhoto.com. And then I also have 2 Facebook sites that I keep pretty up to date, kind of I'm not a big blogger, so I use those more of a blog than anything else, and to keep people up to date and for advertising. So you can just search for Labonte Photography on Facebook, and you'll find both the training website and the my normal photography website, or page, if you will. We do have another class coming up. Actually, it's this Thursday, October 5th at the MAC. It's a beginner level photography class. Those classes are just $20 for about 2 hours. A lot of times I ramble on those, so sometimes you have to kick me out. So you'll definitely get your money's worth out of me.
And the photo walk is on Saturday the 7th, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Photo walk coming up the 7th. And then just keep a lookout for more classes coming up. Probably, again, like I said, more in the wintertime.
Okay. Well, James, thanks for coming on the show.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Well, there you have it. That was James Labonte. A whole lot of fun to talk to there. Subjects there that I think a lot of you can relate to. Either you're taking pictures with just your iPhone, or you've got a little more higher quality camera. Maybe some tips in the podcast to help you get a little bit more out of it. But if you want to know more, don't forget to check out his website there. It's labontePhoto.com. And you can search Facebook for Labonte Photography, and you get both his sites, both his photography business page and the training classes page that he set up for that. So thanks a lot, James, for coming on. I really appreciate it. Up next, I want to talk to another friend of mine, a guy by the name of Greg Shively. Now, Greg's wife is also a photographer as well. She's a hobbyist. And recently, she completed a 365-day photo journey that Greg was instrumental in kind of shepherding along and making sure they got to a lot of the interesting places that his wife Leslie could take a lot of these pictures. So I want to talk to Greg about all the interesting places he went to and the expense and everything he went to go to get that done right here on the call.
All right, Johnny, we're done.
What? Again, Bob?
Sorry, we're out of time.
Well, sorry, Greg. We'll try it next time.
Again.
That's it for the What's That Like podcast this week. Don't forget to go out to our Facebook page, What's That Like podcast. Just search for that in Facebook. Give us a like. You'll never miss an episode. Subscribe on iTunes and all the other regular places. We've recently been added to TuneIn Radio, so you can listen in on TuneIn if you like that app. And you can always use your Amazon Alexa, the Echo, or whatever you use with Amazon to say, hey, ask TuneIn to play the What's That Like podcast. And you'll get my show right on your Amazon device as well. So with that, talk to you next time. Peace out. What's That Like is available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Search for What's That Like. Subscribe today and never miss an episode. Streaming is available at SoundCloud.com and on the SoundCloud app. Follow What's That Like at Facebook.com/What's That Like Podcast and on Twitter at What's That Like Pod. All opinions of the guests of the What's That Like podcast are their own, not necessarily the views of the host or the podcast producers. We hope you enjoy this podcast serving Central Illinois and beyond. Peace out!